Once upon a time, there was a lighthouse so tall that you could spot its beam from 30 miles away. A mysterious tower that was the symbol of wealth and engineering genius. Made with stones so giant and heavy that it still makes us gasp. How did they do that? It has survived earthquakes, one after another, until it finally crumbled in the 14th century. Fast forward to today, and archaeologists have just hauled 22 of its colossal blocks off the seafloor. They're putting the tower back together, to be once again admired and explored, but not how you might imagine. The Lighthouse of Alexandria wasn't just a lighthouse, it was the lighthouse of ancient civilizations, one of the longest-standing world wonders. Built around 280 BCE, on a tiny island called Pharos, it reached about 330 feet up in the sky. For comparison, that's taller than the Statue of Liberty or Big Ben. Now keep in mind that this was before cranes, steel beams, or gym enthusiasts, and it becomes awe-inspiring. For sailors, spotting that gleaming tower was like finally seeing your exit sign after hours of driving on the world's most dangerous highway. The lighthouse was a sight for sore eyes, because legend says the waters around Pharos were tricky, full of hidden reefs that could smash ships to pieces. Old sources claim it took about 12 years to build, with the price tag being around 800 Athenian talents of silver, which is an ancient unit of weight close to 57 pounds. That means someone had to haul chests holding 23 tons of coins, without a forklift, most likely across the sea. Wow! The lighthouse was so impressive that the word Pharos ended up being used for lighthouses in a bunch of different languages. The structure had a cool three-tier design. It was square at the bottom, octagonal in the middle, and cylindrical on top. On its top, it had a statue, most likely of Zeus or Poseidon. The lighthouse's white limestone exterior was polished with a sun-catching plaster, so it gleamed like a beacon even without fire. At night, things were different. Wood was hard to come by in Egypt, so the fire on top may have been fed with bundles of papyrus roots or even naphtha for a brighter flame. Whatever the fuel, its glow was boosted by a massive polished bronze mirror. Now, bronze mirrors were common back then. It wasn't until the Renaissance, way long after the Pharos had crumbled, that glass-coated mirrors became standard in European lighthouses. During the day, the same mirror could reflect sunlight, and the tower's bright white silhouette, along with the smoke curling up from the fire, would help sailors find their way. Alexandria was one of the biggest ports in the ancient world, filled with merchants, travelers, and messengers, and the lighthouse was its landmark. Now, fun fact, if you're a fan of the Song of Ice and Fire universe, it certainly popped into your mind when reading about the High Tower of Old Town. Some fans speculate that not just the fictional lighthouse, but also the city itself, was directly inspired by Alexandria. And George R.R. Martin's love for ancient wonders doesn't stop there. There's also the Titan of Bravos, and the beloved author confirmed the intentional parallel to the imposing Colossus of Rhodes. For over 1,600 years, the lighthouse stood high against time, storms, wars, and intrigues, just like in the Game of Thrones. But it was finally defeated by nature itself. Sadly, a few major earthquakes during the 14th century brought it down, scattering its massive stones across the seabed. For over 5 centuries, the remains of the lighthouse just sat there under the waves, basically turning into an underwater rock garden. Divers knew about them, but hauling up 60-ton blocks from the sea is a job for a superhero, or a super powerful crane. And, until recently, it was a lot safer to leave them where they were. Alexandria is still, to this day, a busy harbor, and isn't exactly the easiest place for delicate archaeology. In the 1990s, archaeologists started mapping the whole area around Pharos Island. What they found was precision-cut limestone and granite blocks, some still showing carved edges. Over time, more than 100 massive pieces were cataloged, including chunks of columns, statues, and giant building blocks that could only have come from the lighthouse. Finally, in 2025, Egyptian and French teams joined up and brought that super crane along with a team of divers. In a carefully planned operation, they brought up 22 giant slabs from the seabed. There were parts like door lintels, threshold slabs, and a mysterious pylon, speculated to be some kind of monument. Some of those blocks weigh 70 to 80 tons, which is the weight of 20 African elephants. Those giant boulders are on dry land for the first time in over 600 years. But what happens now? Are researchers really about to rebuild the lighthouse like a giant Lego set? Not quite. You can't just stack century-old blocks like that. For starters, no one's 100% sure what the Lighthouse of Alexandria really looked like. Yeah, we've got drawings and clues, most famously, the tiny images stamped into Roman coins from Alexandria. But they're more like an artist's quick sketch, not quite the blueprints for recreating something down to the last detail. And then there's the missing pieces problem. Those recovered stones are just a fraction of the original structure. Over the centuries, much of the lighthouse's material was repurposed. In fact, the spot where the lighthouse used to stand is now home to the citadel of Qaitbay, a fortress built right on its old foundations. The fort is not just a symbol of the past, but also a tourist attraction and a recognizable Alexandrian landmark. So, no, Alexandria isn't about to get its legendary tower back. At least not in that way. Instead, these newly recovered stoneworks are headed for conservation labs to be studied. Specialists will clean, stabilize, and document every carved groove and chisel mark. Later, they're likely to head to a museum. After all, it's part of the national treasure. However, that's not the end of the story. We still have the technology on our side that promises a fully recreated and explorable lighthouse, just like it was all those centuries ago. The entire endeavor is called the Pharos Project, and its mission is to turn those hauled massive stones, lintels, thresholds, base slabs, and even a mystery pylon into a complete walk-through digital twin of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Each piece is getting high-resolution 3D scanning, joining more than 100 fragments already recorded underwater. The goal isn't just a research. The Pharos Project aims to bring back the lighthouse's original look and feel and turn it into a museum. 330-foot-tall structures often have a lot of stairs, and virtual reality is going to be far less painful for my old feet. Museum visitors could walk around its base in augmented reality, while researchers could use the model to test new theories about its structure and function. Hopefully, we'll be able to customize our own atmosphere, dim the lights, and examine the walls just like in a video game. Maybe they'll render pigeons and seagulls to make it even more authentic. We still don't have many details, but the entire thing is being recorded and will be made into a documentary. While we don't have booths to time travel, talented designers can bring the past back to the present. They just need the correct concept art. Sure, nowadays you can recreate almost everything in 3D, but the point here is the authenticity, to put it back together exactly how it was. This is what the Project Pharos wants to achieve. Maybe one day, every ancient world wonder will end up being recreated in a similar way. But there's no reason to stop there. Virtual tourism can save time and money, and while nothing can replace the real experience, visiting authentic locations recreated in virtual reality may be the next best option. Locals are already excited. The citadel of Qaitbay is already drawing people, but now Alexandria is about to get the first digital tourist attraction. Soon anyone with a VR headset can stand on top of this historic wonder, squint while watching the sunset, and finally answer the burning question: is it possible to get exhausted while climbing virtual stairs? And can I customize the soundtrack? Ooh.
There's something absolutely massive and deeply unsettling hiding right next to Stonehenge. More than a dozen giant pits carved into the ground. They're all spaced with eerie precision and form a perfect circle, more than a mile wide. For years, nobody could explain them. They were too big to be animal traps, too organized to be natural sinkholes, and way too deliberate to be random. And the biggest question was, who had the power, knowledge, and reason to reshape the land on this scale 4,000 years ago? So these pits surround a place called Durrington Walls, a huge Neolithic settlement just a short walk from Stonehenge. Archaeologists now say humans dug them around 2500 BCE during the late Neolithic period, when people supposedly lived simple farming lives without metal tools, written language, or modern math. Each pit stretches about 30 feet across and plunges roughly 15 feet down, and together they form an almost flawless ring. To prove the pits weren't natural, scientists went full detective mode. They drilled soil cores and tested the dirt itself, including microscopic traces of ancient DNA and something called luminescence dating, which tells you when the soil last saw sunlight. Every test pointed to the same answer. Humans made these pits on purpose. Here's where it gets wild. The pits weren't dug randomly as people moved along. They were laid out as a single unified project. That means Neolithic builders had to visualize a massive circle, measure distances across open land, and coordinate teams over a huge area without any GPS, drones, or even aerial maps. All they had were people, ropes, wooden tools, and shared knowledge. So why would they invest so much effort and do this? Archaeologists think the pits formed part of a ritual landscape, not a practical one. Durrington Walls already looks like a place where people gathered for ceremonies, feasts, and seasonal events. The pit circle may have marked a sacred boundary. It could have separated ordinary land from a spiritually charged space. Some researchers think the pits symbolized a border between the world of the living and the underworld. The scale of the structure is pretty impressive. It may be one of the largest prehistoric monuments ever built in Britain, even bigger than Stonehenge itself when you look at the total area. And unlike Stonehenge's towering rocks, this monument stayed invisible for thousands of years, quietly hiding under the grass. Generations walked over it without knowing they were standing inside a gigantic ancient design. For a long time, we underestimated ancient people. We imagined them reacting to nature instead of shaping it. But discoveries like this keep proving that wrong. The builders of Durrington Walls didn't just live in the landscape, but engineered it. They thought in terms of geometry, symbolism, and long-term meaning. And this isn't the only case. All over the world, thanks to new technology, scientists keep finding proof that ancient humans worked on massive scales with shocking precision. In the Amazon rainforest, researchers found traces of 2,500-year-old cities hiding beneath the jungle canopy. Scientists spent more than 20 years exploring the area on foot before technology finally cracked the case. The LiDAR technology, which is like X-ray vision that surveys a landscape using lasers to digitally peel away the jungle, scanned a massive area of over 100 square miles. It helped us spot more than 6,000 rectangular earthen platforms, which are likely used as homes or public buildings. They also found agricultural terraces, drainage systems, and carefully shaped farmland. This wasn't a random settlement. It was well planned. At least 15 distinct settlements appeared, all connected by wide, straight roads that cut cleanly through the landscape. These roads didn't follow rivers or slopes as you'd expect. They crossed each other at perfect right angles, forming a grid. The researchers believe people from the Quillamope and Upanu cultures lived there between about 500 BCE and 300 to 600 CE. They farmed corn and sweet potatoes, reshaped the land, and built a system that lasted for centuries. Discoveries like this prove something huge. Far more people lived in the Amazon than scientists ever thought. Tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. And they didn't just survive there, they engineered the landscape. Just like at Durrington Walls, the real story hid in plain sight until technology caught up. Then there's Peru, with one of archaeology's biggest headaches, the Nazca lines. These gigantic designs of animals, plants, and geometric shapes stretch across the earth like an ancient message. so huge that only birds or satellites can see them properly. For decades, people have tried to figure out why the Nazca people made them, how they did it, and what those massive patterns mean. And until recently, the mystery stayed stubbornly unsolved. Walking the desert or flying over it, archaeologists would spot lines and figures and wonder if anything was missing. But the ones already known were just the tip of the iceberg. Traditional fieldwork, with people on the ground slowly mapping things out by hand, took forever, and even then, dozens of smaller designs were just too faint for the unassisted eye. So, instead of scanning the desert on foot, researchers taught artificial intelligence how to see patterns in aerial and drone imagery. They fed terabytes of pictures into trained models, and AI began flagging shapes, curves, and ancient outlines that had been hiding for centuries. In just about 6 months, it identified 303 previously unknown geoglyphs in the Nazca Desert. It almost doubled the number of figures we knew before and showed entire classes of designs. Some of these new shapes are tiny, just a few feet across, but they sit next to giant ones like the hummingbird or monkey. Thanks to all the new finds, scientists can finally start testing theories they had about the purpose of the lines. It looks like the lines weren't just decorations. Many may have been walkways or routes used for ceremonial movement. In case you're worried, AI isn't replacing archaeologists. They still check every promising lead on the ground and interpret everything the machines find. Back in Britain, the pit circle also connects to an even older structure, an early Neolithic site called Robin Hood's Ball. Because it stood so far from the famous stones, it felt like a side character. But it turns out Robin Hood's Ball is from around 3600 BCE, which makes it about 500 years older than Stonehenge itself. It's what archaeologists call a causewayed enclosure, which sounds fancy but really means a big circular earthwork made of ditches and banks. Instead of one clean trench, the ditches are broken into short segments with little gaps in between. And instead of keeping people out, it probably brought them together. Archaeologists think these enclosures worked as gathering places, spots for meetings, feasts, rituals, and social bonding among the first farming communities. Then came the twist no one expected. While preparing land at Lark Hill, a hillside northeast of Stonehenge, for new military housing, archaeologists found signs of another causewayed enclosure. This discovery flipped the map upside down. The landscape wasn't growing outward from Stonehenge, it was already alive long before the stones ever went up. As researchers dug deeper, they found hundreds of flint tools, beautifully made leaf-shaped arrowheads, chunks of human skull, and pieces of antler, likely used as digging tools. Then came the pottery. Different styles showed up in different places, some from the enclosure ditches, others from nearby pits. That matters because pottery styles often act like cultural fingerprints. The mix suggests something big. Different groups of people were visiting the same place and brought their own traditions, tools, and objects with them. All of this changes how we see Stonehenge. The stones didn't appear out of nowhere. They rose in a landscape already loaded with meaning, memory, and movement. Every new discovery like the ones near Stonehenge, in the Amazon jungle and Peru, forces archaeologists to rewrite textbooks and the whole world to rethink the idea of progress. It turns out that ancient people made up for the absence of steel and electricity with observation, creativity, and shared meaning. Something strange is happening in Egypt's desert. Giant, mysterious green circles are popping up everywhere, hundreds of them. And then you've got dozens of canals and roads connecting into something that looks like a river. But it's not exactly that. This is the ambitious New Delta project, and it has one controversial goal: to flood the desert. It's easy to see why. More than 90% of Egypt is desert, miles and miles of sand dunes and dry land under scorching heat. Almost nothing can grow there. So today there are basically only two areas where Egypt can grow large amounts of food: the Nile Valley and the Nile Delta. Together, they cover only about 5% of the country's land, but their crops feed about 99% of Egyptians, and that's becoming a real problem because Egypt's population keeps growing. By 2050, estimates say their population will grow by about 40 million people, reaching nearly 160 million. The Nile Valley and the Nile Delta just won't be enough to handle that kind of demand. See the problem here, right? The population is growing, people need more food. But most of the country is desert, and there's not much room for new farms. So what can they do? The easy solution is the same one you use when your fridge is empty. You order in. Egypt does that too. They buy huge amounts of food from other countries. But importing food is expensive and time-consuming. So they need to create more space for farms. And they need it fast. That's where the New Delta project comes in. This is a massive agricultural plan meant to turn parts of the desert into green fields. The idea is to move water and farming west of the Nile, and if it works, it could expand Egypt's farmland by about 15%. Sounds great on paper, right? But in reality, this plan comes with a lot of controversy. Their idea is to create an artificial river right in the middle of the desert, about 70 miles long. To make it work, they're building tons of roads and canals to support it. And those strange green circles I mentioned earlier are irrigation systems. They pull water up from wells or pipelines, then slowly spin around and spray water in a big circle over the crops. Okay, so we've got this huge artificial river being built in the middle of the desert, but where is all that water coming from? Well, it comes from three main sources. The first, and by far the biggest, is treated wastewater. They take used water, the kind that goes down sinks and toilets in our homes, for example, and clean it up so it can be used safely again. To do that, they had to build a modern treatment plant in El Hammam, a town in Egypt's northern coast west of Alexandria. Its construction was completed in 2023, and it's absolutely massive. It's so big that it now holds the world record as the largest wastewater treatment plant in the world. It cleans an enormous amount of water every day, enough to fill about 3,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools, and most of that water goes straight to farming. The second source of water comes from the Nile. Basically, they're taking water from Egypt's most famous river, sending it through massive canals and pushing it deep into the desert, into this new, man-made river. Finally, the third source is deep fossil groundwater. In other words, it's water from way under the desert. Down there is something called the Nubian Sandstone Aquifer, basically a huge underground reserve of water that's been trapped for thousands of years. And this is where the controversy starts. It's true that there's a lot of water under the Western Desert, but it's limited. Because this is fossil water, I mean it's so old that it doesn't really get replaced. Once you pump it out, it won't refill anytime soon, not in our lifetime, and probably not even for many generations. On top of that, the deeper you drill, the saltier the water can get, and we don't want that. You see, most crops don't like salt. If the water is too salty, plants grow slower, give smaller harvests, or dry out. And when you keep watering with salty water, salt builds up in the soil. The water evaporates, but the salt stays. Over time, the land can turn hard, dry, and basically useless for farming. So pumping groundwater might help in the short term, but it raises a big question. Is this really doable in the long run? And there are other concerns too. The project was sold as a big win. Grow more food, create more jobs, and help Egyptians. It also boosts the economy because they're growing expensive fruits and vegetables that get sold abroad to places like Canada, Australia, and Japan. But that's also the problem. Many people complain that the project is mostly about growing crops to sell abroad. And sure, exports bring money into the country, in the big picture, but that doesn't necessarily mean food gets cheaper at home, or that poorer families can afford more. Because even though it has boosted exports, it hasn't done much to prevent massive food price inflation inside the country. So, Egypt's food security problem still isn't fully solved. Many Egyptians are still dealing with high prices and tight budgets. Another controversial thing is that no one knows how much this project actually costs. The press sometimes mentions $5.2 billion, but some experts put the total closer to $9.7 billion. Just the wastewater treatment part alone is said to cost more than $500 million, but it's very hard to know for sure. Journalists and researchers say there isn't much transparency, and the project's finances are tough to track. Experts also warn that farming in the desert is crazy expensive. Unlike the rich soil in the Nile Valley, the Western Desert is mostly dry sand with very few nutrients. So if you want to grow anything out there, you need tons of irrigation just to make the land workable. And powering all those irrigation systems takes a ton of energy, making farming in the desert even more expensive. Even if you already have a giant artificial river to help you out. Still, some people argue the risks and the costs are worth it, and that things are starting to change. Take wheat, for example. For years, Egypt has been the #1 wheat importer in the world, and that's not exactly a title you want to win, because it costs the country billions of dollars every year. So then the new Delta project comes along, and wheat becomes one of their main targets. Egyptian authorities say it helped them cut wheat imports by 17% in 2025. That saved them around $250 million. This was such a big achievement that the world now has a new #1 wheat importer, China. And it's not just wheat. Oranges, potatoes, grapes. Agriculture is booming over there. According to estimates, food exports jumped from 5 million tons in 2020 to over 8 million tons in 2024. That's why we can say the new Delta project is already changing Egypt's agriculture. And from satellite images, you can see it's changing what the country looks like too, turning dry desert into bright green patches. It's real, and the transformation is pretty dramatic. So there's no doubt this project is both an impressive engineering achievement and a huge experiment. But researchers say it's still too early to know if it will actually solve Egypt's food problem. In the end, it all depends on water, energy costs, and who gets to make the big decisions. If the Nile, treated wastewater, and fossil groundwater can be managed in a sustainable way, the project could seriously boost farming. And if not, it could drain precious water, make the gap between rich and poor even bigger, and leave behind an expensive footprint on the desert.
Well, get this. Scientists could bring Neanderthals back to life within the next 20 years. Not as fossils, not as simulations, but as actual living beings. And no, this isn't a sci-fi movie pitch, but a real debate happening right now in genetics labs and ethics panels around the world. The DNA has already been decoded, and the only thing standing between us and a living Neanderthal is whether we should do it, not whether we can. So let's get some things clear. Neanderthals weren't cavemen dragging clubs around as cartoons taught us. They were just like humans, our close cousins, who lived across Europe and Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. They cared for injured members of their society, made tools, wore clothing, and survived scary Ice Age conditions that would wreck most modern humans. Then, around 35,000 years ago, they vanished. No one fully agrees on why. Changes in temperatures, competition with Homo sapiens, health issues, or interbreeding. All of it probably played a role. The reason this resurrection talk even exists is that scientists finished sequencing the entire Neanderthal genome back in 2010. It's like an instruction manual written in DNA, telling a body how to grow, function, and survive. Now, once you have that manual, the question shifts from what were Neanderthals like to could we rebuild one? This is where CRISPR enters the story. It's a gene editing tool that works like molecular scissors. It lets scientists cut DNA at precise spots and replace sections with different genetic code. They already use it to study health conditions, edit embryos in animals, and even modify human stem cells in labs. Now, in theory, scientists could take human stem cells and slowly replace modern human DNA with Neanderthal DNA, piece by piece. One famous geneticist from Harvard says it could happen within a couple of decades. He doesn't mean that copying a Neanderthal straight from a fossil, because ancient DNA is too damaged for that. Instead, his idea is to take human DNA and slowly change it piece by piece until it matches Neanderthal DNA. So it wouldn't be a copy from the past, but a modern human body rebuilt using Neanderthal instructions. Whoa! Scientists are willing to go through all that because they want answers to questions like why Neanderthals disappeared and we survived. How did their brains work compared to ours? Did they think differently, feel differently, or process language in unique ways? A living Neanderthal could answer questions that bones and fossils never can. Some researchers even think this could help modern medicine. Since Neanderthal genes influence immunity, metabolism, and inflammation, studying a full Neanderthal biology could reveal why certain conditions hit humans the way they do today. So, in a strange way, reviving them could help us. But all this excitement hits a wall made of ethics. A Neanderthal wouldn't just be a lab mouse, it would be a person. That single fact flips the entire project upside down. You can't treat a person like an experiment, even if science really wants answers. Being the only Neanderthal on Earth would be tough, to say the least. They'd have to live with no culture, no community, no one who would want to truly share their biology. They'd grow up surrounded by modern humans who would study them nonstop and forever label them as an experiment. So, critics of the idea are sure that kind of isolation could cause serious psychological damage. There's also the issue of consent, which the experiment would completely break. No Neanderthal can agree to being born into a modern world, raised by humans, studied for life, and used as proof of a theory. Consent is crucial in medical ethics, and you can't even test meds without it. Cloning a human ancestor would break that rule. Now, if we forget about ethics, there are also serious biological risks. No one knows how a reconstructed Neanderthal genome would behave in a modern human womb. Pregnancy alone could be dangerous. Development might not follow expectations. Immune reactions could go wrong. Even small genetic mismatches can cause massive problems when you're building a whole human from scratch, you know. And even if everything worked out, the results might disappoint. One individual couldn't recreate Neanderthal society, and behavior comes from culture as much as DNA. Without a full population, the answers we get could be shallow, misleading, or incomplete. The debate on whether we should or should not bring back Neanderthals is so intense because the possibility of doing so is very real. Genetic engineering keeps accelerating, and the tools keep getting cheaper, faster, and more precise. Right now, no lab has approval to try this. No Neanderthal embryo exists. But scientists, ethicists, and state officials already argue about rules, limits, and red lines, which is another proof of how close it feels. It also brings up the big question of whether scientific curiosity has limits and who gets to decide them. Right now, there's no law that bans resurrecting extinct humans. Once one country allows it, others could follow faster than the rules can keep up. And then, there are scientists who counter all this with a different argument. What if not doing it is also unethical? They point out that we already revive extinct animals, manipulate genomes, and alter life at the deepest level. Understanding Neanderthals could help modern humans survive future climate shifts or mass health disorders. If Neanderthals thrived in extreme conditions, their biology could hold survival clues we desperately need. From that perspective, if we refuse to explore this knowledge, it could cost the world many lives someday. If all this doesn't touch your heart at all because you have nothing to do with Neanderthals, here's a surprise for you. When you look in the mirror, you're probably staring at a tiny piece of one of them. It could literally be in your DNA. According to a study from a couple of years ago, Neanderthals didn't just vanish into thin air, but blended into us. Modern humans, whose ancestors migrated out of Africa, carry about 1 to 4% of Neanderthal DNA. Scientists only have a handful of high-quality Neanderthal genomes to study, just 3 really solid ones. They come from bones found in a cave in Croatia that are about 50,000 to 65,000 years old, plus two others from Eurasia dating to around 80,000 and 50,000 years ago. It's not a lot to work with, which means every new discovery matters a lot. Every person has two versions of each gene, one from mom and one from dad. When two very different groups mix, their offspring end up with more genetic variety. The scientists compared DNA from those three Neanderthals with genetic data from about 2,000 modern humans. What they found was shocking. Neanderthals themselves may have carried up to 3.7% modern human DNA. So Neanderthals weren't just mixing into us, we were mixing into them too. Roughly 1 out of every 30 Neanderthal parents may have been a modern human. And this didn't happen just once. The DNA shows at least two big periods of mixing. One happened around 200 to 250,000 years ago, and another around 100 to 120,000 years ago. There may have been more, but DNA is like a blurry photo. The older the event, the harder it is to see clearly. According to another recent study, most Neanderthal DNA in modern humans came from one long, intense mixing period about 47,000 years ago that lasted nearly 7,000 years. That's generations growing up together. This lines up with real bones, too. Scientists found skulls about 100,000 years old in Middle Eastern caves that look mostly like modern humans, but with thick brows and other Neanderthal-style features. Sadly, it looks like Neanderthals had a much smaller population than scientists thought. This makes it harder for them to stay genetically separate. As waves of modern humans kept moving out of Africa and mixing with them, Neanderthals didn't disappear, but dissolved into the larger human population. So, Neanderthals didn't lose the game of evolution. They're part of us. It's something worth keeping in mind when you think about the ethical side of bringing back one of them.
For centuries, the whole world was wondering how the giants of Easter Island moved around. Maybe powerful chiefs ordered big groups of workers to haul them. Or the elite controlled special statue-making quarries. But now we finally know the people of Rapa Nui didn't drag their moai statues into place like lifeless logs. They made them walk. Scientists looked at nearly 1,000 moai, checked their shapes, proportions, wear patterns, and the gentle forward lean and curved base that many statues have. And then it struck them. Those details weren't accidents, but engineering. The forward lean shifts the center of gravity, and the curved base lets the statue pivot like a pendulum. Once the motion starts, inertia helps carry each step. Think of it like walking an enormous stone toddler using ropes and balance. To prove this right, the research team built a 4.35-ton replica. The real statues were around 13 tons, and some weighed up to 80 tons. With 18 people on the ropes, they walked the statue about 300 feet, about the length of a football field, in 40 minutes. That's faster and easier than dragging something flat across logs or rollers. The old roads of Rapa Nui also help the process. They're about 14 feet wide, and the way they curve inward makes them perfect to keep a statue steady while it walks forward. Every time the islanders moved a moai, they weren't just walking it, but they were literally shaping the road as part of the job. When you look at the island's landscape today, you can actually see these paths crisscrossing each other, sometimes running side by side like alternate routes. The ancient workers were likely clearing a stretch of ground, moving the statue a bit, clearing a bit more, then rocking it forward again in a specific rhythm. It looks like they spent just as much time prepping the road as they did moving the statue itself. So, the ancient Rapa Nui didn't need thousands of workers or modern machinery, and it all worked with just ingenuity, rhythm, teamwork, and clever design. Their transportation wasn't the only moai mystery. People knew the statues were meant to honor important chiefs, but no one could explain why the ancient islanders picked those exact spots for them. Most of the moai sit right along the coastline, almost like they're guarding the island. So a team of scientists took a closer look at those locations. And the answer turned out to be all about water. Easter Island's volcanic soil is super porous, which means it soaks up rainfall quickly. Because of that, there weren't enough rivers or streams, and the island ended up with very limited fresh water. Hundreds of years ago, the people survived thanks to groundwater discharge. Basically, water stored deep underground in layers of rock or soil called aquifers eventually rises up to the surface on its own. When that water bubbled up near the coast, it mixed with seawater, but the mix stayed fresh enough to drink. The locals collected it right from those coastal spots, and that's exactly where they built the moai. They weren't just decorating the coastline, they were marking the island's most essential source of fresh water. Now, most of the moai bodies were made from volcanic tuff, a soft, easily carved stone, and most of the statues were carved in one quarry inside an ancient volcano. In October 2023, a wildfire tore through the quarry, and everyone who cares about Rapa Nui got really concerned about whether the site would survive future disasters. So when a team of scientists arrived in January the following year, a local community group asked if they could document the quarry, just in case another fire damaged it for good. The geographers jumped at the chance and launched about 30 drone flights over the quarry. Flight after flight, they collected an incredible 22,000 photos. After that, they spent months running those images through computer software that stitched every piece together into a single, hyper-detailed 3D model. Now anyone in the world can explore Ranu Raraku, one of Easter Island's most important quarries, without even setting foot on the island. Of course, the 3D model isn't just an online tour platform. The team noticed that there were several workshops inside the quarry, and carving techniques changed from one site to another. So there wasn't one chief who told them how to do it, but rather each spot worked like its own workshop that was tied to a specific family clan. This could also be another proof that the moai could move with far fewer people than anyone once believed, probably around 20 to 50. That's roughly the size of an extended family or small lineage group on Easter Island. Most statues were carved while lying on their backs, from the top down. In the most common method, the carvers focused on the face first, shaping the eyes, nose, and mouth, and then carved the outline of the head and body around those features. The second method flipped that order. They carved the entire block into the basic shape of a moai first and didn't add any details until later. And in a few rare cases, the carvers went at the stone from the side and worked straight into a nearly vertical cliff, which must have taken some great skill. And just when researchers mapped over 1,000 moai and thought they knew them all, the island threw them a curveball. In the middle of a dried-up lakebed, a place no one expected anything, another statue appeared in 2025. It was the first statue found in a lakebed before, and it might not be the last. For at least 200 or 300 years, the laguna was almost 10 feet deep, so it would be impossible for humans to build or put a statue on the bottom. Scientists think the moai are over 500 years old. It's possible that the Rapa Nui people who built them probably brought the statue here when the lake was dry in the past. The new find turned out to be slightly over 5 feet tall, which is smaller than the other statues on the island. As the region continues to dry out, the lakebed has started revealing what it's been hiding for who knows how long. More statues could be tucked under those thick reeds that grew over the lake for centuries. Now that the water has receded, scientists might be able to use ground-sensing tools to detect what's buried beneath the surface. While researchers keep studying the statues and solving their mysteries, nature is playing against them. A new study shows that by 2080, seasonal waves could push far enough inland to hit some of Easter Island's massive moai statues. These stone giants have stood through everything: harsh sun, relentless wind, pounding rain, lichen slowly creeping across their surfaces, and even wildfires. But rising sea levels already threaten the island's coast, and the moai now face a danger bigger than anything they've endured before. Researchers built a super detailed digital model, a digital twin of a bay on the island's southeast coast. They ran a bunch of simulations to see how different sea level rise scenarios would change the way waves move through the bay. The results of these simulations showed that waves could start reaching the site's 15 moai by 2080, and then of the most recognizable and photographed statues on the island could end up flooded. This spot sits on a big ceremonial platform and draws more visitors than almost any other moai spot on Rapa Nui. And the danger doesn't stop there. Dozens of other important cultural features nearby are also in danger. Ancient dwellings, petroglyphs carved into stone, burial sites, old rock gardens. Basically, the entire physical memory of Rapa Nui's cultural history. If the island doesn't manage these risks, it could even lose its UNESCO World Heritage status. Now that researchers understand the threat more clearly, they want to use this knowledge to help protect the island. Scientists hope to collaborate closely with local communities to safeguard Rapa Nui's cultural heritage for future generations.
So, archaeologists have uncovered an entire block of Pompeii, and it looks like it all belonged to one uber-wealthy individual. They had a huge private residence, a laundry, a bakery, and a large private bath complex where they literally bathed in luxury. Scientists think it could be the largest ever found there, complete with 3 rooms with different temperatures, exquisite artwork, and a huge plunge pool. It was lying beneath layers of volcanic rock and ash for 2,000 years, but it's so well preserved that it feels like the people had only left a minute ago. The bathhouse was in a residential and commercial block known as Region 9 in the city center. It could fit up to 30 people at a time and was a status symbol used to impress visitors. Only a few houses in Pompeii had a private bath complex, so it was something for the wealthiest of the wealthy. The owner may have invited guests to discuss business or even host team-building events, much like a modern-day CEO of some big company. Guests would start in the first room where they soaked in hot water, then move on to the room where they applied oil to their skin and relaxed in warm water. The final stage was a cold water bath to refresh themselves. It was the largest and most impressive room with red columns and frescoes of athletes. There was also a changing room with a stunning mosaic floor with marble from across the Roman Empire. The complex also had a smaller space painted in pale blue, most likely an ancient Roman shrine used for ritual activities and to conserve sacred objects. It looks like the residence was in the process of renovation. There were tools and building materials in the blue room, like oyster shells on the floor that were supposed to end up on the walls. Another recent discovery from the complex is a large banquet hall with some of the finest frescoes found among the ruins. The bathhouse connected to it, and the guests would enjoy lavish feasts here. In one of the frescoes on the walls of the hall, we can see Apollo and his romantic interest Cassandra, who rejects him. The second fresco shows Prince Paris meeting the beautiful Helen of Troy. Almost the entire floor of the hall is covered by mosaic tiles, over 1 million of them. They probably chose to paint the walls in this room black to hide the traces of soot from all of the lamps. This proves that the hall was lit, and the owners of the residence probably entertained their guests here after sunset. The restorers who are working in the hall need to act quickly to protect new finds and move what they can to a storeroom. They inject a plaster glue to the rear of the frescoes that can't be moved, so they stay in their place on the walls. Archaeologists have been digging at the estate for 2 years. In the summer of 2024, they found the remains of 2 people in the room next to the blue one. They had passed away during the volcanic eruption that buried Pompeii. One was a woman between 35 and 50, and the other was a young man between 15 and 20. Despite the man's age, his bones had signs of wear and tear, so he was most likely of lower status. The woman's bones and teeth were in excellent condition, so she must have been higher up in society, probably the wife of the owner of the house. Scientists found a whole bunch of stuff on the marble top in the room, like glassware, bronze jugs, and pottery. The lady and the young man probably brought them into the room, hoping to wait out the eruption. The guy had some keys near him, and the lady had gold and silver coins and jewelry. The coins are still shiny as new. Pompeii used to be a hub of trade and travel, so these coins must have served them well at one of the many artisan shops, taverns, and about 200 cafes and bars. That's about one place to eat and drink for every 60 residents. They even had fast food shops, something like ancient drive-thrus. Archaeologists dug out one of these with paintings of chicken, duck, and other food that were probably used as a menu. They also found traces of pork, fish, snails, and beef in jars and other containers at the fast food counter. The food was mostly to go and sold in large jars. There were also some back rooms for sit-down eating and drinking. You would only see the residents with a low income at one of such places, as they didn't have kitchens in their homes and relied on cafe food. The wealthy had kitchens in their residences, but they were small, poorly lit rooms, usually tucked away at the back of the house. Most of the time, the only thing inside was a big brick hearth. Some richer families had a small oven built into the corner, kind of like a pizza oven. The only other things in the kitchen were a water basin for cooking and washing dishes, and maybe some wooden tables for preparing food. Romans didn't have fancy kitchen tools like we do today, but they had everything they needed. They used bronze or iron frying pans, deep cooking pots, and small portable ovens to bake bread. Instead of plates, they served food on big round platters. Lunch was a small meal, usually just some meat or fish, fruit, and maybe some drinks. It was quick and not fancy, so people didn't invite guests to eat with them. Since it got super hot in Pompeii, people took a nap after lunch. Later, in the afternoon, they went to the public or private baths, where they would relax, swim, and chat with friends for hours. Afterward, they had their main meal, which was bigger and sometimes included guests. The food was pretty simple, but tasty. Most meals were boiled, smoked, fried, or baked, then flavored with a starchy thickener or fish sauce. The fish sauce was actually so popular that one of the richest families in Pompeii made a fortune from selling it. They even decorated their front hall with a design of garum jars in mosaic. Another big source of wealth in Pompeii was land. Every owner of a big residence had a plot of land where they grow vines or olives or graze sheep. Archaeologists haven't found many of these properties yet because it's hard to know where to look for them. But they did find a burial ground of one well-known Pompeian family in the countryside, next to what they believe was their country house. One of the most exciting things to do for Pompeians with different levels of income was going to the amphitheater to watch big, action-packed shows with gladiators. Their giant stadium is the oldest surviving one of its kind in the Roman world. The shows lasted for days, and crowds came from all over to watch. Fans got so excited that in 59 CE, a huge brawl broke out between people from Pompeii and a nearby town. After that, the authorities shut down the amphitheater for 10 whole years as punishment. Some people in Pompeii even made paintings on the walls about that brawl, bragging about their victory. There were also paintings of the gladiators. Many Pompeians also loved going to the theater to watch plays. The local theater was built in the 2nd century BCE and was later made even bigger and fancier. People watched funny comedies, silly performances called farces, and dramatic plays about ancient myths. Some plays came from Greece, and wall paintings in Pompeii showed that people liked the famous Greek playwright Menander. Next to the big theater, there was a smaller roofed concert hall built around 75 BCE. They used it for musical performances.
Divers have found something incredible in a Florida sinkhole, and it was… Stop, we need to leave a warning here. You're about to hear some pretty unusual scientific information. This knowledge will make you the smarty pants in your friend group. But there's also a risk that they'll look at you as a nerd. So perhaps it would be better for you to keep this knowledge a secret. In any case, it won't be superfluous. So, You know that scientists divide the history of our planet not only by time periods, but also by which animals lived at a certain time. For example, 2,000 years ago, Earth was inhabited by the blobfish, and scientists call this time the blobfish period. It's a joke, there's never been such a period, but you get the gist. The period between about 419.2 million and 358.9 million years ago is called the Devonian period, or the Age of Fish. Do you know why? Because the first fish began to appear on the planet. The Paleogene is the period of large mammals. The famous Jurassic period marks the appearance of giant dinosaurs, which we often see in the movies. Even now, we live in a certain period called the Quaternary period. It began about 2.6 million years ago and continues to this day. This is the time of humans and modern animals. So the next time somebody asks you what time it is, you can just answer, it's the Quaternary period. In short, the names of these periods depend more on what creatures inhabit the planet. The longest period is the Precambrian period, or Age of Early Life, the time when life on the planet started to form. Soft-bodied worms and jellyfish swam in the ocean, while microorganisms lived on land. This period occupies almost 90% of the Earth's total geological time. It started about 4.5 billion years ago and ended 540 million years ago. Oh, it's still a video about divers, don't forget. We'll get back to them soon. Considering all these periods, do you know which one is of the most poorly studied? A period about which scientists know almost nothing, especially about the animals that lived at that time. This is the Irvingtonian North American land mammal age. It lasted from about 1.6 million to 250,000 years ago. Scientists have very few fossils that belong to this time, but recently, everything has changed. In the USA, there's the Steinhatchee River, which stretches for several tens of miles in the area of Big Bend, Florida. And just 500,000 years ago, there was a sinkhole instead of the river. This is a hole in the ground that forms when water dissolves the upper rock. This rock is often limestone. Sinkholes appear in places with a lot of precipitation. Sometimes these pits can be invisible. They look like ordinary ground, but the soil in them is loose and can easily collapse. If you accidentally get into a sinkhole, people will hear your screams and help you. But in the distant past, about 500,000 years ago, when animals got there, they couldn't get out of the pit, so it became their grave. After many, many years, a river appeared here, and then several fossil collectors decided to check out this place and discovered a real paleontological treasure in it. They plunged into the river and reached the bottom. There, in the murky water, they saw horse teeth sticking out of the sediment. It'd be pretty scary to find for many of us, but for these guys, it was the jackpot. After the teeth, they found a hoof shaft and the skull of an unusual animal. At that moment, the collectors realized they had made a major discovery. Over the years, the sinkhole at this place had been filled with sedimentary rocks. Then, the river compacted all this mass, which made it possible to keep everything inside the sinkhole in good condition. Many animals got trapped in this pit 500,000 years ago, and only now have people managed to get them out. More precisely, what's left of them. Divers have found more than 500 fossils belonging to ancient animals, including unknown species. They got well-preserved bones of ancient horses, giant armadillos, sloths, and a new species of tapir. The Florida Museum examined the remains and determined that they belonged to the poorly studied Irvingtonian North American land mammal age. Most of all, scientists were struck by two finds in this collection. The first was the remains of a giant armadillo-like creature, and the second was the skull of an ancient tapir. In case you didn't know, this is a very cute pig-like mammal that has a short trunk like an elephant. Divers in Florida found the remains of a distant ancestor of this animal, which may be a new unknown species. Most of the fossils in this sinkhole belong to early Cabalene horses, a subgroup that includes modern domestic horses. The remains of horses are so well preserved that scientists have seen signs of wear on their teeth. This will allow experts to understand the diet of these ancient creatures. We often hear news about people finding the remains of ancient animals or dinosaurs in caves, ravines, or at the bottom of lakes. But imagine if they found such remains in a museum. It all started in the early 2000s, north of the Florida border in southwest Georgia. There was a mine where workers mined clay. One day, they found the remains of some ancient animals and gave them to the Florida Museum of Natural History. There, these remains lay in storage, waiting in the wings. And then one day, some guy started sorting them out and noticed a mysterious vertebra of an unknown animal. This little grab caught the guy's attention, so he returned to it over and over again. He studied it, trying to figure out what species the bone belonged to. One day, he realized the bone belonged to an unknown extinct lizard species that looked like a tegu. You've probably seen these predatory creatures that look like monitor lizards. So, the age of the bone was about 15 to 17 million years old. Let's wrap up our video with something weird. You see this piece of amber-colored stone with stripes? Or is it not the stone? It looks like an ancient seashell. So right now, you're looking at the oldest fossil in history. It's a stromatolite, and its age is, you won't believe it. Make a guess. 100 million years? 500 million years? 1 billion? No. This fossil is about 3.4 billion years old. It represents one of the earliest forms of life on Earth. No, not the stone itself. Stromatolite is just a playground. The early form of life here is these thin strips. They're called cyanobacteria, tiny single-celled creatures. Okay, what about the remains of something bigger? Some ancient animals, for example? Meet the trilobites. They lived here during the Cambrian period, which began about 500 million years ago. This is the time when many invertebrates and fish began to appear. Their exoskeletons helped the trilobites stay remarkably well preserved, considering their age. They were arthropods that looked like something between a spider, a scorpion, and a mutant from another galaxy. These animals lived for a very long time, and people find their remains almost all over the world. They appeared at the very beginning of the Cambrian period, survived it, and became extinct at the end of the Permian period. During the Permian mass extinction, when about 90% of all living beings were wiped off the face of the Earth. These creatures swam in open water, burrowed into the seafloor, or crawled along it. They lived like predators and scavengers. The front of the animal was protected by a strong head shield. It had crescent-shaped eyes and a calcified plate on its lower body. This plate covered its esophagus and mouth. It had several pairs of legs growing from its body. The trilobite could also curl up into a ball, like a woodlouse. In the near future, humans extract ancient DNA from a long-extinct creature. They patch up the missing pieces with genes from a modern-day animal. Then, in a high-tech lab, they bring the species back to life. Sounds familiar? Well, yes, that's actually the plot of the original Jurassic Park. But the thing is, we're now living in the timeline where researchers are doing exactly that. Although this time, the star of the show isn't a raptor or a T-Rex. Believe it or not, scientists at Colossal Biosciences want to bring back the giant moa. Think of it as an ostrich, only twice as tall and way bulkier. It was a massive flightless bird that went extinct almost 600 years ago. The moa once roamed the forests of New Zealand, towering up to 12 feet tall with its neck stretched. This makes it the tallest bird to ever walk the planet, It weighed almost 500 pounds, but funny enough, that doesn't make it the heaviest bird that ever lived. That crown goes to Madagascar's elephant bird. But still, 500 pounds of bird is not something you want running at you in the woods. The giant moa didn't have wings or a beak built for battle, but it didn't need them. For thousands of years, it lived in peace because it had no natural predators, literally being the top bird. Well, almost. The only thing that could take down a moa was the Haast's eagle, a giant bird of prey with a 10-foot wingspan and claws like steak knives. That was the balance of nature, until people arrived. Around the 13th century, the Maori settled in New Zealand, and as humans do, they adapted quickly. The moa, big and slow as it was, became a crucial and probably delicious food source. Within just a few generations, the moa was gone, and not long after, so was the Haast's eagle. No more moa meant no more meals. It's just how nature and survival work. The Maori were skilled hunters, making a life in a new land. But their arrival marked a turning point in New Zealand's ecosystem, one we're still talking about today. The moa wasn't just big, it played a huge part in keeping forests healthy. Now, 600 years later, scientists want to recreate it using cutting-edge technology and ancient clues. But why go through all this effort to resurrect a bird that's been gone so long? Well, according to Colossal Biosciences, the same company behind those gene-edited direwolf cubs that we talked about before, it's not just about the wow factor. They say moas helped shape the landscape itself. In New Zealand, moas helped control vegetation and spread native plant seeds. They kept forests from becoming overgrown and unbalanced. Without them, some plants lost their main seed carriers, and invasive shrubs started to take over areas once kept in check. So, the idea is, if we can't rewind the clock, maybe we can reboot the system. Introduce an animal that fills the same job that can help restore what's missing. Okay, but how do you bring back an extinct species? And is that even possible? Well, sort of. But not in the sci-fi clone a complete dinosaur way like in a movie. The original moa has been gone for centuries, and its DNA is damaged, degraded, and full of holes. So instead of making a perfect copy, researchers are going to remix, so to speak. They'll take whatever usable moa DNA they can find and patch the gaps using genes from its living relative, probably the emu. With a tool called CRISPR, which is like a Photoshop for genomes, they'll stitch it all together, tweak the embryo, and grow it in a lab. If all goes well, the result will be something that looks, walks, and stomps like a moa, but not exactly a genetic twin. It won't be a clone, and it definitely won't be 100% authentic. However, Colossal Biosciences says that's fine. If it behaves like a moa and fills the same job in the ecosystem, that's mission accomplished. So no, we're not recreating the past. Not literally. We're building something new that plays the same role. But here is where it gets interesting. Colossal Biosciences seems to be just getting started. They've got an entire extinction comeback roadmap in place. In addition to the giant moa, the company is also working on reviving the woolly mammoth, the dodo, and the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. Each one vanished under different circumstances, but the goal is the same: to create a modern version that can fill the ecological gaps those animals left behind. Woolly mammoths were Ice Age elephants. They were befriending ground sloths and shaking the Arctic ground with each step, knocking down trees and flattening snow. During the Ice Age, this region wasn't the frozen wasteland we know today. It was called the Mammoth Steppe, a dry, windy grassland stretching from Spain to Siberia to Alaska, filled with cold, hardy grasses and scattered shrubs. Mammoths helped keep it that way. However, some scientists think that their disappearance may have turned open ecosystems into soggy, carbon-trapping wetlands. So now, the idea is to mix mammoth DNA with Asian elephants to create a fuzzy, cold-loving hybrid that could help the Arctic stay grassy instead of swampy. maybe even help slow down climate change by keeping the permafrost frozen a little longer. The dodo bird is probably the most famous extinct animal in history. It lived on the island of Mauritius, where it ate fruit and helped spread seeds across the forest. After European sailors arrived, the number of dodos slowly dwindled. It disappeared in the late 1600s, less than a century after it was first discovered, and some scientists believe that its absence had lasting effects on the island's ecosystem. One example would be the Tambalakoke tree, also known as the dodo tree, which might have depended on the dodo to help its seeds sprout. The theory has been debated, but it's safe to say that the dodo had a part in keeping the island's plant life balanced. Now, Colossal is aiming to reintroduce a bird that's similar to the dodo, hoping it can help those forests regrow as well. And then there's the thylacine, my favorite. It's part wolf, part kangaroo, with tiger-like stripes. Despite these strange features, it was a top predator and helped control prey populations in its habitat. But after being blamed for attacks on livestock, it was hunted to extinction. Researchers believe a new thylacine could rebalance nature where things have gone out of hand. So yeah, the moa might be the headline this time, but it's just one project on a much longer to-do list. However, this is where the big debate begins, because not everyone's on board with this whole bring back a beast plan. While scientists dream of second chances, plenty of people still have big questions. For example, are we actually helping the environment or just poking it with our really expensive science stick? These new animals aren't exact copies. They're mashups. Close enough maybe, but not the originals. Also, ecosystems aren't machines where we can just swap out a part and expect them to work the same. There's also the wildcard factor. A lab-made moa might not act like the ancient one. It could munch the wrong plants or throw off the balance by outcompeting something that wasn't even around the last time it existed. Some experts worry that tossing new species into today's ecosystem could backfire. After all, the world they're coming back to? It's different. And in some cases, their old homes don't even exist anymore. There's also a deeper concern. The message this sends about extinction. If people believe we can just bring things back, will they take conservation any less seriously? Will protecting endangered species feel less urgent if extinction stops being permanent? So while the science behind all this is undeniably impressive, the ethical questions aren't going away. Should we be reviving species, or should we be doing more to protect the ones that are still here? If both options are true, how do we do so successfully? Whether it's mammoths, moas, or dodos, one thing's clear. We're not just studying nature anymore. We have the power to rewrite it. And like Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. Let me know what you think. And as always, stay on the bright side. Hold your breath, we're going to the seabed. What do we have here? A lot of fish, octopuses, coral reefs, perfect circles of unknown origin, shrimps, stingrays, sharks. Wait, what? Hold on. What are those perfect circles on the seabed? Wow! Perfectly symmetrical, 67 feet in diameter with a clear outline. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. There are so many of them. 1,300 strange rings at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. What are they doing there? How did they appear? Try to guess. Traces of an extraterrestrial civilization? The remains of an ancient city? A new kind of sea creature? There's a 99% chance you won't be able to give the correct answer. But here's a little hint. There's a connection between these circles and the Ice Age. It seems that the mystery has become even more complicated, but let's find the answer together. So it all started in 2011. Marine biologists discovered mysterious circles at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, and the first question that arose was why no one had noticed them before, given the vast territory these circles occupied. The fact is that a big part of the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea is too shallow and close to the shore. And for this reason, no one is engaged in mining there. At the same time, the bottom is too deep for scuba divers. Thus, the circles were in some kind of blind spot. Let's move on. The circles are approximately the same size with a clear outline and perfect symmetry. But the strangest thing is that there's a dark spot in the center of each of them. Visually, it looks like a fried egg with a yolk in the middle. In 2013, biologists discussed the discovery at a scientific conference and made assumptions about the nature of these circles. Perhaps they were connected to underwater volcanoes that left such strange marks after the eruption. Perhaps it was a strange geological formation. But why are they so perfectly round? It doesn't look like they appeared by accident. Okay, let's move on. Is it possible that it's coralline algae growing in weird shapes? You can guess as much as you'd like, but scientists needed to go down to the bottom and study the rings up close. So they did. In the center of the ring was a large protrusion formed by red calcareous algae. This ledge was several feet high and wide, and there were swaying fan-shaped growths at its top. The strange ledge was surrounded by some kind of pale scree that looked like debris. The black ring itself consisted of rhodoliths, accumulations of hard, rocky algae. Scientists realized that those weren't just circles. They seemed to be alive. Okay, more questions appeared. Let's say it's some kind of strange algae. But why form these circles? What made them this way? Scientists took samples of the material from the center of the circles and found out that they were about 21,000 years old. At that time, large-scale events were taking place. They changed the appearance of Earth and the fate of all creatures living on it. 21,000 years ago was the peak of the last ice age. The Mediterranean Sea was much smaller and colder than it is now, and the seabed on which the mysterious rings appeared was closer to the surface. Now it's dark here, but at that time, this place was illuminated by sunlight passing through the water. Scientists also discovered several caves with layers of sedimentary rocks near the circles. In the past, these caves were located above the coastline and were washed by waves, resulting in erosion and the appearance of these empty gaps. Now they're completely underwater. Okay, what does this give us? The cold sea was not too deep during the Ice Age. What's next? Next, the scientists found out the nature of these strange ledges in the middle of the rings. At first glance, they looked very similar to corals, but in fact, they were sediments formed by coralline algae. These photosynthetic organisms created a skeleton of calcium carbonate, and the reason they did it there is that it was a warm place with access to sunlight. In the beginning, these algae were thriving. They expanded outward and formed something similar to domes or large pancakes. Then the Ice Age began to end. The weather became warmer, the water gradually heated up, and giant continental glaciers began to melt. A huge amount of melted ice flowed into the Mediterranean Sea. Its level rose, the bottom became deeper, and there was less and less light. The beautiful algae slowly plunged into darkness. Their domes collapsed and left behind those little ledges in the center and pieces of calcium carbonate scattered around. For thousands of years, there was nothing around those algae remains. But where did the big circles come from? After the melting of glaciers, the Mediterranean sea level stabilized about 8,000 years ago. The algae grew new layers in the form of small ledges, those swaying fan-shaped growths. This organism began to develop the pieces of calcium carbonate, and then small pieces began to roll down the ledges. They rolled in different directions, forming those perfect circles. At the moment, this version is the most realistic. Scientists say they have no direct evidence that the mysterious circles appear this way, but they also have no reason to believe that this version is incorrect. If any of you were hoping that someone or something had deliberately drawn these circles, don't get upset. There are other mysterious circles on the seabed, and this time they were created for an important purpose by one amazing creature. In 1995, divers noticed beautiful circles with a geometric pattern right on the sandy bottom of the shores of Japan. It looked like someone had drawn them on the sand. The circles weren't ancient because otherwise the water would have swept the patterns away. Indeed, soon those drawings were erased, but then new ones appeared. Nobody knew what was going on. Was someone drawing stuff to tease divers? But it turned out to be much cooler. The patterns were supposed to attract females, and this someone who drew them was a small, white-spotted pufferfish. The males of these fish flap their fins on the seabed, swim in different directions, and thus draw amazing patterned circles. They have no art education, and they probably can't think abstractly, but they really want to start a family. These fish are about 5 inches long, but their artworks are about 7 feet in diameter. These little artists try their best, but what happens afterward? The female swims in, looks at the pattern, and gives her score. If she likes the pattern, she's ready to start a family. If she doesn't like the drawing, she dashes away and leaves the poor pufferfish with a broken heart. Nothing much is known about the drawings. Scientists can't get into the fish's brain and find the answers. All we can do is observe. And during long observations, scientists noticed some curious things. Around the center, there are perfectly aligned gaps and patterns. The fish not only draws outlines on the seabed, but also decorates them with fragments of shells. That is, the male tries very hard, like an artist working on their painting. The fish creates this masterpiece within 7 to 9 days. After that, undercurrents wash it away, and the fish has to rebuild it if the female doesn't like this work. But if the female chooses the male, they become a couple. The female lays eggs in the center of these circles. Then she swims away, and the male stays with the eggs for 6 days to protect and care for their offspring. The behavior of these fish is similar to that of bowerbirds, birds that build small huts out of twigs and leave and decorate them with colorful berries and flowers. And all this in order to attract a mate to create offspring. The country's authorities are hiding something from you. They don't want ordinary people to ever find out the truth. You can see a lot of fake photos and false locations on the internet, but almost none of them are true. So what secret are they keeping? You definitely don't expect to hear this. They're hiding a tree. But it's not just a tree. Money grows on its branches. Can you believe it? Of course not, it's a joke. But the truth is, America does protect the oldest tree in the world, and its name is Methuselah. You can Google it and you will find a lot of fake pictures and some old gnarled aspens. Real photos of Methuselah are quite rare, and its location remains a mystery to this day. It's known to grow somewhere along the Methuselah Trail in the Inyo National Forest in California. It's a bristlecone pine tree, and its age is more than 4,600 years. Imagine how cool it would be to touch the trunk of that tree and feel all those thousands of years of history. Only it's not cool. This is the reason why the country is hiding its location. If thousands of tourists touched the tree and picked up small pieces of its branches, it wouldn't last even a month. Many trees in this area are pretty weak right now and suffering from drought and all kinds of bad insects. So Methuselah is also in danger. Don't touch or approach it, even if you find out the location. The tree was discovered by dendrochronologist Edmund Shulman. A dendrochronologist is a scientist who studies the rings of ancient trees. But more on that later. So Shulman discovered the tree in the middle of the previous century, and over the past 50 years, it has become shrouded in rumors and legends. But how did Shulman know it was the oldest? In 1957, he took a core sample and studied the tree's annual rings. You see, every year, a layer forms inside a tree, resembling a ring. But scientists don't cut the trunk, don't worry. They extract a piece as thick as a pencil, and that's enough. The more layers, the older the tree is. So, Shulman counted Methuselah's rings and found out that it's been growing for more than 4,600 years. This means it's even older than ancient giant redwoods, which were considered the oldest trees on the planet. In 1958, Shulman told the story about the existence of Methuselah and posted its photo in National Geographic. From that moment on, the tree became popular. Many people wanted to pluck a cone or twig from it, so the authorities forbade publishing information about the location of the tree. Later, other scientists examined Methuselah's rings and suggested it could be younger. though some rings were too faint or damaged to count. In any case, it remains the most ancient tree on Earth, officially confirmed that is. But it wasn't always like this. Back in 1964, a geographer, Donald R. Curry, stumbled upon a tree called Prometheus, which was about 5,000 years old. And you know what he did? He just cut it down. There are many theories about why he did it. The tool for getting core samples was broken, or this guy didn't know how to use it, but the result was sad. The tree didn't survive. Hopefully nothing like this will happen to Methuselah and it will live a long life. But why are scientists so worried about it? Yeah, it can tell a lot about the history of our planet. But is there another reason? There's a theory that this tree could live forever if no one cut it down, and droughts or parasites didn't destroy it. So basically, Methuselah's like nature's fountain of youth. Imagine if we could use that trick on people. Okay, now we know what the US hides. But do you know what Australia keeps secret? Not just a tree, but an island. Even if you were allowed to visit the island, it wouldn't be easy for you to get there. The island is located between Australia and Antarctica, somewhere in the middle of the ocean. But it's unlikely that you would get such permission. The fact is that Heard Island is completely untouched by humans, and Australia wants to keep it that way. You'll find little reliable information about this island on the internet. All we know is that the island has 2 active volcanoes, Australia's tallest mountain, and several glaciers. But you know what the coolest thing is? It's home to animals you won't find anywhere else. The island's closed ecosystem preserves creatures that might have never seen people. The next island is quite famous and is located in Brazil. The authorities don't keep it a secret, but they protect it from tourists. Even if you had permission to visit this place, you probably wouldn't want to. This is Snake Island, and its name speaks for itself. This piece of land contains the largest concentration of venomous snakes in the world. Those are golden lancehead pit vipers. One bite of this snake is critically dangerous for a person. The snakes are all over the place there and have almost no competition from other animals. Only specialists capable of handling these reptiles can visit the island. Lots of secret places stay off limits because humans can mess them up without meaning to. It's not that we're bad, it's just that even being there can change tiny invisible parts of nature. And here's a great example of the kind of destruction we can trigger. You've all seen photos of ancient cave paintings with horses and bulls. One of the most famous of such caves is the Lascaux Cave, which is located in France. On the walls inside the cave, people found more than 600 drawings and about 1,500 engravings. The 20,000-year-old drawings depicted different animals. Scientists opened the cave to the public, and this led to a disaster. Too many people came to see the cave, and it messed up the cave's ecosystem. Then a fungus showed up and started spreading over the walls, ruining the old drawings. It was a tragedy for the scientific world. The cave was quickly closed to visitors. Now, only a small group of archaeologists can enter it. No one knows when or if the cave will open again. Those glimpses of human history from the first European settlements might be lost to the public forever. Our next secret location is in Svalbard, Norwegian archipelago. This is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, a massive storage vault that can keep 4.5 million seeds of different types. The authorities say that the seeds are stored there to preserve the population in case of a local disaster. But a lot of people think they're tucked away for the apocalypse, ready to help us replant Earth if everything goes wrong. But why, of all countries, did people decide to store seeds here? Because of Svalbard's cold, dry climate. The weather conditions here are ideal for seed preservation. The vault is well guarded, it's classified, and no one can get inside except for authorized persons. All our secret places are connected with nature. An island, a forest, a cave. But how about finishing the video in the city? It's in plain sight, but it hides a secret room that is impossible to enter. In Atlanta, Georgia, inside a museum with top-notch security, The secret Coca-Cola recipe sits locked away in a massive safe. What? Yes, this is probably one of the most guarded secrets in the world. Money, diamonds, ancient artifacts. None of them get the kind of protection a single sheet of paper with the Coke recipe does. This secret has been kept there for more than 125 years. The unique storage design and security system make burglary almost impossible. You can visit a specialized museum and see the door to the vault, but nothing else. Sure, it sounds a little crazy to guard a single piece of paper, but then again, this drink has made the company billions. Coca-Cola has been one of the world's favorite drinks for over a century, and it's still raking in massive profits, so it's not surprising that its recipe is kept so secret.